I think it's safe to say we're all going to have some COVID-19 trauma in our futures. Because I'm crying simply because the last time I was here in South Haven, I believe was February, and it was at a time when I was trying to turn my life around, emotionally speaking. I think I even got caught in a snowstorm. Like, it was really nice out. I came down here January 31st. I remember that because I had a really good songwriting day where I wrote a song in Saugatuck. I wrote a song in like a cemetery in Holland, then Saugatuck, where I wrote one on the street. Both of these I think are even on my Bandcamp. Like, that's how much the Call Your Mother one and the Live in Your Mind, Live in Your Feet, Lo-Fi Life one. And that was January 31st, and then I found South Haven and saw their skating rink, and I just kind of fell in love with how South Haven is a lot like Grand Haven, but it's closer to Chicago, and it's, I don't know. I don't want to project out a future. I have no idea if it's a future I'll have. This is a church that I think is really beautiful. Church of the Epiphany, which is what my life has been. I remember when I realized that what my life is, or what I wanted it to be, I realized it in college. I think I was a junior in college, and I realized that I either had or wanted a life of constant epiphanies. And I remember when I used the word, I remember how arrogant I felt. Like, who's to say we get to have epiphanies, and who's to say mine are of any special importance? But I've softened that, because I think what happened was when I started sharing with other people what my life felt like, being a writer, writing a musical, like words and music, and producing it as my honors thesis project in college. And I think what I did is I lost my ability after that time to just be excited about how I was made and what I'm able to do or interested in doing. And a lot of it came through hard work, like 20 years of piano competitions and grueling labor for things that I didn't even care about. And now, yes, I have piano skills that I get to take advantage of, but that privilege didn't come without an insane amount of work. And so instead, what happened is I went out in the world after those years of working hard and not even noticing other people because I was working so hard, and then getting out in the world and realizing a lot of people either resent or aren't interested in hearing about how much I'm enjoying my own life. Like, a lot of people don't want to hear that. And so if you're like me, you might do all this work to get out of toxic situations or abusive patterns and build up your life and finally feel better about yourself and speak up and find a voice. And then sometimes what happens is nobody wants that voice either. Like, maybe they didn't want your complaining, sad, draining black hole of need self because it was hard on them, but also they might not want your I'm so excited about my life self because some people aren't in that place, or because it's still all about you, which is me. I'm saying I am that way. I am often very all about me, and I know that that's a trauma response, but it's also like a sort of young soul, weird soul response. It's like feeling so different from others that, like, I'll give you an example. My favorite friends when I was in elementary school were people who would spend hours with me writing songs, learning songs, playing those songs, and I would be like the Casio person, but they would sing and dance every single lyric with me, every single dance move. I'm thinking specifically of my friend Julie and my friend Heather McCarthy and my cousin Alicia. My sister Stephanie would try to do it, but she was 4 years younger than me, and so I think she couldn't always do the same things that I was doing, but she had that same love of it, and she would do weird dance routines with me and whatever. And so I guess what I'm saying is that was what I enjoyed, but then when I tried to make friends with like groups of people, you know, they didn't necessarily want to just make up songs or sing songs for hours or sing in harmonies or whatever it was I was into. So I think that's how I became sort of focused, is because it's very hard to find people like Julie and Heather and my cousin, and they didn't even stay that way necessarily. I'm not close with any of them anymore. They all live very far away from me, but like, it's hard to find people who want to just make things up all day and then perform. And I mean, it's a very youthful quality. I think that my life, if I'm honest about what releasing 25 or 30 or more albums looks like, and I have about, I keep growing new ones and I don't have time to even do all the work for them, but I probably have like 10 projects that are in the works right now. And it's like, someone might just say, well, that's just very childlike. They don't make you money. Like, go do something responsible. But I don't, and I won't, and I could, but I don't want to. And I feel like this is who I am, and this is what I'm meant to be. And I'm processing a lot of really complicated truths this way. But I guess what I'm saying is, wow. So yeah, to bring it back, like COVID-19 trauma, yes, number one. Number two, I've written so much in the last few months. I've written so much, I've processed so much, I've changed so much, I've experienced so much, and I want to put it out into the world. And honestly, it'll sometimes just be one person's feedback per album, and that's it. James, Dylan, new patron and fan, thank you. You know, people, it's like my eyes are feeling like they're about to start watering and cry, but I'm too happy to feel that way. But I'm not happy because we're living in socially complex times and there's always more we can be doing. But for me, with all this trauma, I can't do too much unless I work on my inner world. So it's like, and nobody's, I guess that was one point, one tangent point I was trying to make, is like telling other people how great you feel or how healed you are falls in a similar category to telling people how sad you are and how overwhelmed you are. Either way, it's about you and it doesn't involve them. And so unless you can find ways to involve people, I guess that's one of the things I feel like I've grown on is, and these check-in videos are very much for me too, but maybe the only way that I see these as for others is because I'm interested in ideas and the idea of what happens to an artist. You know, I think of like Tennessee Williams, whose plays were so depressing and depressed, and like I would have been curious in my college years to go inside his mind and like learn all of that stuff. So like that's what these are. These are my sort of compulsive need to document the journey of what it feels like to be, and I don't want to say tortured artist, but there's a lot of that in me. I don't want to be a tortured artist. I would much rather be a happy-go-lucky artist, but like I have been seriously and severely traumatized in my life, both individually from partners, boyfriends, not my current one at all, like best person I've ever been with in my life. But just having lived through so much of that kind of torture, then yes, I'm a tortured artist, but it's not because I think that that's cool. It's not, you know, the way they say, like you read things in college and you think, oh, I need to be this to be an artist. And it's like, no, please, dear God, don't. Like, if I could choose a different path, I would. Like, this is not, it's not enjoyable to have pretty severe PTSD. Oh, so personal stuff, but also like living a mile from 9/11 when it happened, and in New York City. So, and living through the Trump era and watching all these people basically go crazy online, because we all have been going, not all, but a lot of people who had my similar beliefs just started like almost spinning out online, because like how hard it is to just feel helpless and powerless to make change. And there just came to be this philosophy of like being silent is being part of the problem. And so all of us over speaking on social media didn't necessarily help anything either. And so thankfully nowadays some people are actually, you know, I don't want to comment on peaceful versus non-peaceful. I'm obviously a peace-oriented person because I've lived through so much crisis and war, interpersonal war with my partners, and also living in 9/11 New York. It's like I don't see the value in letting things escalate all the way to the point of war and then people dying for causes. I mean, I don't know where this country is headed, and I don't know if that's what people hope happens, but I will just tell you how it feels to be in this country in the last, since everything with George Floyd, how it feels. Rest in peace, rest in power. How it feels to be in this country is a country that the people are taking the power back, and we are a people. Most of the people I know, even some conservatives who are just checking out and enjoying their lives and living in their lake houses, and you know, I don't see a hatred mostly around me except for corruption. Even the people that I see who are keeping silent, it's just like they just are too far removed from an ability to sacrifice everything they've ever believed in to come down on the ground and really stand up for something. And so I don't know what their mental inner worlds look like in order to justify or stay comfortable with their comforts. Like, I don't know, because I stay comfortable with my comforts. My comforts are just at a much lower level because I'm like paycheck to paycheck, kind of a lower middle class kind of person, just by virtue of having grad school debt and trying to live off just being a piano teacher. Sorry. Weird thing to have to touch your eyes in this era. Anyway, I've lost the thread of like 5 different thoughts. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is a different feeling here in the last few weeks. And I know it's because some people who had only been speaking are now taking to their feet and going in the streets. And civil rights movements have created change in the past. So I think there is a genuine hopeful feeling, a hope. And I haven't had hope in such a long time. I have been living like a ghost. It's in a bunch of my songs. I have been living like a person who doesn't believe in this world or its people. And I just don't know how much that feeling of no hope has come from living in an Obama era where, whether or not we were a good country doing good things, I guess I don't know, but the rhetoric was hopeful in Obama era, and to go straight from that into Trump era where the rhetoric is almost violent and has been since day one with him, and people don't seem to mind or they overlook it for financial gains. Like, we did a very quick flip in this country, and it's a very hard place to live and be okay with yourself. I don't know, at least now, for me, for almost everyone I know. And I know a lot of conservatives, and I don't see most of them as being comfortable in this era. The only thing might be just the tax breaks, and even that is, I don't know. I can't speak to that. But I do know some business owners, and I guess I am going to speak to it, but I do know some business owners and people who are worried for a flip back the other way, and how it could put them out of business, tax-wise or other things. Oh my gosh, it's a cardinal, and it's so beautiful. I feel like I'm getting bitten up by some sort of little creatures on this log. You can see my new bag. Didn't work out with Bernie, but it's a cool bag. And he's still leading the way, because that's what he does. Who cares about people that much? It's insane. I've never seen somebody in my lifetime that cares about every single person that much. He doesn't seem to care about himself that much. He exhausts himself. He doesn't even act like he has a self. He doesn't even acknowledge when people are gushing at him. Never talks about himself. That level of selflessness is something I can't understand, and I don't know how he got to that level other than practice and action. And my path has been very different than that, by putting myself at the center of my work and my ways of perceiving the world. And I hope that I'm useful at least to the other people who are doing the same thing, you know, to kind of orient yourself. It's like being on the Titanic. And I say this in like a Buddhist Taoist way, like we are all headed towards death. So like we all are on the Titanic. But like, I don't mean that to be depressing. I just mean, you know, and it's just the difference between being on the Titanic and being the person trying to take care of everybody and putting themselves last, or being on the Titanic and being hyper aware of yourself, which all the villains are that. I'm not trying to call myself a villain, but like all the villains are that, like noticing what's the worst thing and then running away from it, like not pausing and turning around to see who else is struggling. So that level of bravery and courage and care for others, it diminishes the self with the goal of helping others. And I have known people that noble in my life, and they blow my mind. I would say my two best friends both have those traits. I can't wrap my mind around it because I can't even manage myself. And maybe one would argue, well, then don't focus on yourself so much. But then at the end of the day, you have to pay all these grad school debts. You have to figure out a business. You have to figure out how to pay your bills. And if you're like me, just that tiny irritant of how to pay my own bills is enough to, like, if I have to be self-focused in order to care for myself, my bills and my whatnot, then that creates this whole world of chaos. And maybe it's because I've always been such a writer ever since I was a kid. I process life, I process feelings by writing songs. And I've done that since I was like 3 years old. So like, well, probably realistically since 6 or 7. But we found songs when I was a kid. So it's like, maybe I could be 100% selfless if my needs were met. Like, if I could just live in some institution, maybe like a mental institution. If I could just live somewhere where my needs were met and my food was there and there was lights and heat and I didn't have to do any real world responsibilities, then I think I do have more of a servant nature. I used to really love my jobs where I was a piano player for musicals for kids, especially ones where I got to like write the musical with the kids. And I did that for a job at Child's Play Touring Theater, and kids would write the stories and we would help them convert them into songs or into plays or whatever. And sometimes where we, the adults, would act them out for them and sing for them, and sometimes where we would teach the kids how to put on their own show. And either way, I'd still be the piano player and I'd be like the narrator. And so we all went to the forest, and then and I'd play forest walking music, and the kids would act, you know, and they were writing the songs, and I was teaching them about rhyme schemes and lyrics and chord progressions and song structure. And it's just, I loved doing stuff like that. And when there's a flow for that, that is something I love focusing on work-wise. But unfortunately, without a company to work for that, it's a lot of like promotion and hustle, and I don't have hustle. I've learned I don't have any hustle. That's why I've written 30 albums and you've never heard of me. Because some of these were like produced in a studio. Multiple were. I just don't have hustle. And now I just write so much that I can't care that I don't have hustle. And if the choice is between cutting 200 of my songs to focus on 10 so I can make a better album, knowing that I won't hustle it, then I'm just like, meh, I'm over that. I'll just put out all 200 songs and you can see who I actually am, rather than me faking who I am, pretending to be someone who wants to cut 190 of my songs. I don't want to be someone who cuts 190 of my songs. I want to put all of them out badly. Not because I want them to be bad. I'd love for them to magically be high quality produced. I'd love for someone to swoop in and want to produce me. So far I haven't found that person. I had that person. If you go to my jessicafogel.bandcamp.com, F-O-G-L-E, the album Du Bestein and Vogel was produced by a superhero named Ethan Stoller, who just swooped in and produced an album with me for free for no reason when I was poor and wasn't gonna. I had big dreams, but I just didn't know how to make any of them come true. So he helped make one come true for me. And then I didn't know how to promote it, so He did all that work, and then I dropped the ball, and that's just... Because no one teaches you what the ball is. No one teaches you how to do any of this. So, you know, I get advice here and there from my sweet man, partner, everything, soulmate, Brian. Sometimes I just call him Bri because I like to be clear that his Y is in there. B-R-Y-A-N. It doesn't even make sense. Okay. Anyway, but like, he's always trying to help encourage me in the direction of making things as high quality as I can without it squashing my creative flow. And I love that about him. I love that he understands that the world pays attention to things that are high quality, but he also understands that most of the world, but the way that I create and compose and exist is so free and free-flowing that I need to find systems that I don't have to think too hard about. I don't know. It's really nice to be here. South Haven at Episcopal Epiphany Church. My grandma was an Episcopalian nun. After she had kids. And then her husband died in their 70s. And she lived till 94. And she became a nun in her 80s because it had been a childhood dream. It's weird because my life doesn't even feel like a very big deal, but I had come to really love some of my routines, and one of my routines was driving to places like this an hour away and just getting some distance and some perspective. For some reason, I like to imagine I know the reasons, like it's some mystical thing, but even if it's not, for some reason, South Haven reminds me a little bit more of where I grew up, which is Racine, Wisconsin. Which is like the metro Chicagoland area. Racine, Wisconsin's right between Milwaukee and Chicago. And South Haven, for some reason, just feels a little bit more like that part of the world. Whereas where I live in Grand Haven, which is an hour north of here, it feels like a pocket of time that isn't mine. And I like being there, but it doesn't feel quite authentic to me. And so South Haven feels, or Saugatuck feels, or south of Saugatuck. Well, anyway, I love Saugatuck. But all of it just feels a little more, maybe Douglas. Like a compromise, like an in-between of the two. Like it's just hard to be somewhere, to live somewhere that doesn't remind me of how I felt when I was a child. And so I think that's why I come down here so much. Or I was starting to. Because I'm trying to learn who I am, and you know, I was going north a lot for a while to make these videos and explore and write songs because I had some trauma from north stuff, where my ex lives, and a job that wasn't the right fit for me, where I took on a trauma that the school had gone through. I replaced somebody who had done some bad things, and you know, don't do that lightly. If a job or a house or whatever comes available because of something dark, like, you know, even if you don't believe in ghosts, if a house that you want becomes available because people went crazy and like someone killed someone or something, like that lives in the space. And I'm not saying that's what happened with this job, but the person who had been in that position through their actions created a trauma in that place, and I replaced this person, thereby inheriting the painful systems and the trauma, the leftover trauma of that person in that situation. And I wouldn't wish that on my enemies. It is not a I don't know, it's like a superhero syndrome or something. Maybe I have been the Titanic person trying to go help everyone. It's like I knew that the place had that feeling, but I just thought I was light enough, and I was happy enough, and I was healed enough, and I was connected enough to my support network to handle that level of darkness and confusion, and I wasn't. It affected me. It altered me. It changed my life path. And in hindsight, I can say that it was a catalyst that cracked me open and kind of shook me out of some complacency that was dark in the other direction, which was me accepting unacceptable things. In other words, I left a partner that was mistreating me very badly because of this place that kind of jarred me out of some complacency. But in any case, all of that is north for me, and I don't need to keep exploring that. Like, if you've healed some things or tried to heal some things, you don't have to keep exploring them. I used to think you did. But what I'm learning now is that, well, I had learned this already. When I lived in Chicago, I learned this when I was going to say wasted, but spent a year with a therapist digging up some stuff from when I was very young, like digging it all up and really thinking it through. And what that therapist and what no therapist will ever talk to you about is that when you choose to do that, like say at 25 you do that, you devote your life to your teens or your preteens, it's like, then that year of 25 is kind of gone. It's lost. So whatever trajectory I had been on, which, I mean, in that case, I was becoming so unfunctional because of some pain. So it's okay that it was gone. But it's just not something people talk about enough, in my opinion. It's this idea that if you go to therapy or you seek help in some way, that steals your present. And your present goes away, and your present becomes about your past. And I am of a much different mindset now. I don't believe that that's necessarily right now. My sister and I have talked about this so extensively. Thank you, Stephanie. You are like my biggest lifesaver. You and Brian. I don't even know how I would exist. There's a really cute squirrel over there. He's eating. Oh, I just remembered a mouse that we caught ethically in my kitchen, and then I couldn't take him out till the morning, so it was 2 a.m. when I found him in my little peanut butter trap, and then he was dead in the morning. I was really upset because I didn't know why he couldn't live overnight in a perfectly ethical, non-harming trap. But I prayed for him. I'm so weird. I'm sorry. Sorry, Mom. Just kidding. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, the idea of continually revisiting something to heal it also recreates it. It reignites it. So if you keep digging into the same stories of your past, like, what is healing except letting go, forgiving, and moving on? That's healing. And so you dig into it, sure, enough to know what it is, know what the triggers are, so that you're not unconscious about it. And my sister hates that word, but that's what they say. I know it's subconscious, but that's not what they say. So anyway, so that you're not unconscious about it, you dig into it just enough to know so that you don't make the same mistakes and repeat history absentmindedly. Like, cool. But if you just keep digging into it, then that's your whole life. Then your whole life becomes centered around that trauma. 1 trauma or 10 traumas, your life becomes centered around trauma. And I mention my trauma too often, but the reason I keep mentioning my trauma lately is because I'm using it as an excuse to explain why I can't be a more ethical person and care more for the disadvantage that I'm seeing all around me. It's like I feel too guilty just letting people be. I feel too guilty taking up space online. I can't check out entirely, but I also can't be as selfless as a Bernie Sanders. I have tried. Even just for like 4 days, and I lose my mind. I think that either I'm not wired that way, or I am, or that's what it is to be a writer, is to use yourself as the center, and then that is self-centered. Like, I guess I just don't know. There's people just talking across porches, and it's incredibly charming. I just feel better here, but not really, but yes, really. But it's okay. I like Grand Haven too. I found out I have B positive blood, which is like originated from nomads. So it explains why I like to move. I like to try new things, but I also like to move on from them. I don't want to make that new thing that isn't my feeling of natural or my feeling of core into my permanent reality for the rest of my life. But when you get to be my age, you also kind of get interested, or at least curious about maybe like buying a house someday, or like having some sort of equity or stability or roots. And, you know, I've been teaching the same piano students for over 5 years now, and so it is kind of weird to either A, imagine leaving them, or B, imagine staying for life in something that I don't know if that's what I meant to do for life. It's very weird. Or just if I don't know if that's where I meant to be for life, but I love those kids. And I had kids that I loved when I worked in Chicago too. And I wouldn't have met these kids that I now get to teach had I stayed with those kids that I loved in Chicago. It's just weird to realize that you have a kind of nomadic soul. We are of the people who are bullied in Japan. A lot of my life recently made sense. I wrote an album about it. It'll be called 1010108. It's not released yet. It's also called Or Everything is Connected. And it's about alpha versus omega, or, you know, like 1010, you know, male versus female, but not really yin versus yang, like positive energy, negative energy, like electrons, like it's all those things. And then there's 8, this infinity loop, which looks kind of like a bee if you straighten out one of the sides. And like it's, I think that track, most of it's about my 2 different qualities being both alpha and omega, being truly both. And at the end, the last track is called Strange Beta Testing, as if there's like some reality where us crazy type B people were entered into humanity, like a weird beta test. Come down from, like, I think it's the Himalayas or something that they say like type B blood kind of originates back from, and it's nomadic people, and who knows. I mean, but it feels true, because a lot of people who remind me of me with this like kind of way of seeing both sides, of seeing the whoops. Anyway, yeah, seeing both sides and like creating systems, and like I see the value of people who are what they would call type A, like I guess that originates from farmers or something, and like creating a system. Like, here's order, here's structure, we need to organize this. But that could also be like the roots of like slavery. So like that's not okay. You know, create a system if you yourself are willing to work, not just if you're going to sit at the top and tell everyone else what to do. And then the other side, the hunter-gatherer origination, I guess is what it is described as. You know, that makes sense to me from a perspective of like, everyone for themselves, we can all be free and we can all create our own individualized, personalized systems. And everything's valid because every human is valid, every body's valid, every perspective is valid, every voice is valid. But I've seen situations where things like that can sometimes end up in endless conflict, because no one's the leader and nobody is creating a system, and the whole thing is not chaos, but it just doesn't necessarily band together, because a lot of times it's like the too many cooks in a kitchen concept for like a movie. Like if there's 12 directors making a movie, it doesn't necessarily make a better movie. It makes a very convoluted message sometimes. And so some systems, I mean, I don't know, I just feel like, so that's like the 0 or like the omega, like, or like the holding of the world, you know, where we're all included. And then the 1 is like the I don't know, the alpha, this one idea, this one thing, it's very male, it's very yang, it's very, and even the yin yang symbol has been really sticking out to me as having that swirl in it. It's kind of like the 8. Anyway, but I don't think type B blood people are liked at all in Japan, because they're considered uncooperative or selfish. And it's like, a lot of times some of us, most of us that I keep seeing, are kind of getting perspective on the whole and assessing it. And I think some people think that the idea of everyone's, I see value in both approaches, and so that's unreconcilable unless you similarly choose to just see value in both approaches. But it's not reconcilable as in I will convince you or you will convince me. And that's why I don't understand teams, I don't understand competition, I don't understand warfare, I don't understand any of that, because the end result isn't going to be somebody on the other side going, oh, I see what you were saying, now I get it. You know, you might change one heart or mind that way, but not the whole. Anyway, I'm just rambling. I should go wander around South Haven. Plus Brian tried to call, that's why this had a chopped off thing. I should see what he wants. I mean, I don't have to, but that sounds fun. Bye. I blew a kiss at you because I was thinking about Brian. Not because you, my random fan from somewhere, you probably are nobody I've met, or if you're someone I've met, or like you're a friend of mine, that's very cool. I know a couple friends of mine who watch these. Some of them were friends who were originally fans, and then I just have a hard time having fans. So sometimes, at least at this point in my life, fans sometimes end up friends. Anyway, which isn't like a promise, because that's not, I have very few friends. I don't think I like having friends. Again, it goes back to that sort of self-centeredness, but it's the friends that I do have, I'm learning to like deeply cherish and reach out to, and I never used to be good at that, and now I'm realizing I can be good at that just out of a sense of, you know, yes, I have very few friends, and the ones I have are people that who they are just lines up and resonates with me very, 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 very well. And why wouldn't I express gratitude for that all the time? I'm losing my concept of quantity over quality. Like, I'm to the point now where I recognize that, like, having a few really strong connections in my life means a lot more to me than something bigger than that, or reaching more people than that. It's not for everyone, but that's where I'm at right this second. Goodbye.